Wait, here, let's do this. There we go. Hello, 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 everyone. It is another Friday morning, and you are here on the Love Your Liver live stream. My name's Dr. Garrett Smith. I am also known as the nutrition detective around these YouTube parts, and we're here to talk about human health and nutrition, and something that is most people have never heard of, because it kind of is my thing coming up on the heels of Grant Genereux and Anthony Mawson, which is toxic bile theory. Toxic bile theory in a nutshell is that your health problems are created from inside of you as your liver stores toxins, which it does. Use the word accumulate when you search PubMed. Don't use the word store. Nobody uses the word store in science. They use the word accumulate. You can also use the word content, and you can find that toxins are higher in the liver and kidneys than anywhere else. They do store toxins. And that's what we're going to get into with cysts today. But back to the toxic bile theory, your liver, people think of the liver as your detox organ, right? So a sewage processing plant is kind of our sewage detox, right? Does the sewage that goes to the sewage processing plant simply disappear when they're done with it? What happens to the worst stuff that they have taken out of the sewage? What do they do with it? They put it somewhere, right? Because it doesn't just disappear. Well, your body puts the most toxic stuff from your liver and from the detox process that it can get rid of, that it doesn't send to the kidneys. It puts it into your bile. Lots of people out there on the internet are talking about how wonderful bile is and you need to make more of it. And it has to be the right consistency. And no. If your liver's healthy, all of that stuff will happen automatically. There's nothing you should have to do to make, you should not be taking herbs to make your bile whatever. You should not have to be taking anything necessarily to make your bile better. What you want to do is stop putting the poisons into your body, which is what makes your bile toxic in the first place, and facilitate the removal of bile from your system via preferentially, very preferentially, your poop. You want to poop it out. It does go to your kidneys, and it ruins your kidneys. It does go out through your skin, and when you get a lot of bile coming out of your skin, you get things like eczema and psoriasis and dry skin and itching, all sorts of skin problems when that toxic bile comes out through your skin. So always remember your detox order, the way you want to get rid of things. Liver to bile to poop, numero uno. That's the way you want it to go. Kidneys are next. Skin is last. Because if you want to have nice looking skin, you don't want toxins coming out of it. You want them out in your poop. Your poop is designed to detox. And if you think of your bile as your liver's poop, it all starts to make sense. Okay? So most of your health issues are from your bile being too toxic. And then anybody who has health problems just about has some amount of what's called cholestasis or subclinical cholestasis, which means that at some point in your bile system, you are leaking bile into your blood. This could happen directly from the liver. Your liver cells could leak. The little tiniest bile ducts in your liver can leak. Those go straight to your blood. That's called intrahepatic cholestasis. There is extrahepatic cholestasis, which is basically bile leaking into your blood from anywhere along the bile ducts and anywhere along your intestines. And if the bile goes back up to your stomach, which is GERD and heartburn, you can directly absorb bile through your stomach. Let me find that paper. I just want to put that paper up. I don't know if I've put this up before, but this is really why, for those of you who are on the program and doing the stuff with me, you really want, if you get bile in your stomach, you want to soak it up as quickly as possible. Here's one of the papers. Absorption of bile salts from human gastric mucosa. That gastric is stomach, mucosa is the lining, absorption is absorption. Hopefully, if you're here listening to this, you've got it where you understand what absorption means. So there's that link. You absorb bile. You don't want bile in your stomach at all. So yeah. Okay, I see the super chat, Ramon. I will get to that. So let me just get through the topics of the day. But anyway, so on that note, everybody, if you want your question answers, we get to the questions after I do my little topic of the day. And their super chats are enabled, which is where you could give me a donation to get your questions first, as Ramon did. Thank you for that, Ramon. Then the other things, if you want to help this get to more people, if you're a fan, we added 181 new subscribers in the last 30 days. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing it. I think that's the most we've added in a month at this point. So it's working. So to help it work, if you're in the chat, X out of the chat, go like this broadcast. If you're here live, like it, you can chat. And then if you're seeing this later, leave a comment. Doesn't have to be a fancy comment. It could be comment. Some people have done that. They just type comment. So you can do that. But anyway, that's how you can help this grow so that the little people working inside the computers know that this is popular and that people like watching it. That's, how you can do that. So, okay. Moving on. I was sitting there the other day. So one of the things that I believe is that the body does the best it can. So this is kind of a belief that's very prevalent in counseling and therapy, which I do believe it's true. People, or even animals, they do the best they can with the tools they have at any one moment. This makes sense, right? So if we assume that the body is doing the best it can with the tools and limitations that it has at any one moment, then when we see disease processes, we don't assume that the body's messed up or broken, which is what conventional medicine does. And often alternative medicine does the same thing. If you have a health problem and they just give you an herb for it, did you have an herb deficiency? Does herb deficiencies exist? So if they're giving you the herb and it's not specifically for an essential nutrient that is maybe high in that herb, then what they are doing is they are giving you a plant drug to force your body to do something that either it didn't want to do or it couldn't do on its own. Right? This only makes sense. Most drugs are based on compounds found in plants. So how far away from drugs are plant compounds that make your body do something? Okay. Can these things be used? Sure. Just don't think that just because you took an herb and your problem went away that the problem's gone. It didn't go anywhere. You can suppress things with plants and drugs. This is very important to realize. So we are always after two things that were in my naturopathic doctor oath. One is treat the cause. No one has an herb deficiency, for example. No one has an essential oil deficiency. No one has a mega dose B vitamin deficiency. First, do no harm. A lot of practitioners out there or health nuts are switching to stevia. And then you go and I tell people, like, the bad guy's goal is to make you sick and stupid, infertile, and die early. And then you start going and looking in the research and you see that stevia can cause infertility. Wow. Now stevia is showing up in all sorts of things. If you go and you look at quercetin, you can find infertility in the literature with it. If you go and you look up ivermectin, you can find infertility in the literature with it. Do you think that the alternative side isn't corrupted either? they have plenty of money to corrupt all the sides. So anyway, a little off topic, but back to cysts and tumors and cancers and stuff. So for example, I believe that copper is toxic. Funny thing that they find copper elevated higher than everywhere else in cancer tissues. Okay. So what if, and then the copper apologists will be like, the copper's there to help. No, it's not. It's being put there because the body's trying to wall it off. Body's storing copper in those tumors. Okay. So cysts, tumors, cancer is a last ditch attempt by the body to store poison out of the way of the blood where it can affect the heart and the brain and your soft tissues and everything you need to live. Your body cannot get rid of it fast enough. So I was thinking the other day, after somebody on Twitter contacted me they were talking about their polycystic liver. So poly, multiple, right? Multiple cysts in the liver, and his polycystic kidney disease. So I started thinking, have I searched for cysts and bile before to see if there's an excess of bile found in cysts? Thought it'd be interesting. So I looked this morning. Came across this paper. Bile acids in human breast cyst fluid. The identification of lithocholic acid. Lithocholic acid, if you did not know, is a secondary bile acid. A secondary bile acid is, well, there's primary bile acids and there's secondary bile acids. Secondary bile acids are the most toxic by far. So here we have bile acids in human breast cyst fluid, the identification of lithocholic acid. Okay, so what does this mean? So your body makes primary bile acids. These bile acids go into your intestines. If you have a dysbiosis, a significant one, your gut bacteria, dysbiosis meaning a improper balance of gut bacteria, you don't have enough of the right ones and you got too many of the bad ones, okay? Or the undesirable ones. So these bacteria get a hold of the bile, and if you have a dysbiosis, they turn it into secondary bile acids, which are much, much, much more toxic. Okay, so what they just said, and then if you have cholestasis or toxic bile leaking into your blood, the only way you would find secondary bile acids in the body is because there was a dysbiosis, made secondary bile acids, and those secondary bile acids, instead of being pooped out, leaked into your blood. And now they're stuck, as they're showing here, they're stuck in human breast cyst fluid because your body is trying to take them out of the blood and store them somewhere. This is a desperate attempt by your body to not croak. Okay, your body will always pick the slow death over the quick death. The quick death would be like too much poison in your blood affecting your heart and your brain. You know, you get a stroke, you get a heart attack, you get sepsis. Don't want those. So the body says, well, instead of letting these float around the blood because the toxic bile is leaking into the blood, I assume the body is intelligent and the body is going to try to get those poisons out of the blood. The body works together. Certain tissues are going to create more tissue to put the poison into, to keep it out of the blood. That's the slow death. Okay, the body will always choose the slow death over the quick death. So we're in this article. So they did breast cyst fluid. They took fluid out of breast cysts, so fibrocystic breasts. They took fluid out of it, and they analyzed it for bile acids. If any of you are into research and you want to go and look and see if you can find other articles on bile in cysts, please go look. And send it to me. It was hard to find this one. Okay. So I want you to listen to this first, because people always go, well, shouldn't there be a lot of bile in the blood if you're finding lots of bile in cysts, let's say? So here's this interesting statement here. This is where I say, okay, so your blood level of vitamin A, your serum retinol, doesn't necessarily correlate to how toxic your liver is or how toxic your tissues are. Your blood level of copper, serum copper, doesn't necessarily translate to how toxic your tissues are with copper. Okay, is this true for bile in the blood? Here it says low levels of bile acids were found in serum samples, blood samples basically, precluding overt hepatobiliary complications. So they're saying they obviously didn't have major liver and bile duct problems because low levels of bile were found in the blood. Well, I'm going to tell you, you don't want any bile in your blood. Why would bile be in your blood? How would it get there unless it leaked, which is the definition of cholestasis? Your bile is by definition the most toxic fluid in your body because it is the waste product of your sewage processing plant. Okay, so now here we go. So these are bile acids: deoxycholic acid, chenodeoxycholic acid, and cholic acid were detected in 11 of 12 samples of breast cyst fluid. 11 of 12, that's a pretty high rate. Huh. In 2 cases chosen at random, the identities of the bile acids were verified by mass spectrometry. Lithocholic acid, a reported co-carcinogen. This is a bile acid that is known to be carcinogenic. That's not good. Was detected in 6 of the 12 samples of breast cyst fluid. This is the first report of the presence of lithocholic acid in breast cyst fluid with confirmation by mass spectrometry. This was 1990, folks. And I'm telling you, I had a heck of a time finding any research on bile in cysts. Did they stop researching this? Why would they have done that? 30 years ago. Why is it so hard to find research on the contents? Why aren't they researching what's in cysts? Wouldn't that be important? Couldn't that give us a clue? So, where was the so there was lithocholic acid in there. And then here they go. Here, this is 1990. This is the scientists. This is how much people don't understand toxic bile theory. Yet to be elucidated are the mechanism of accumulation in bile acids in breast cyst fluid, and whether levels of particular bile acids in breast cyst fluid may serve to identify that small subset of women with fibrocystic disease at risk for developing breast cancer. I can tell you how bile acids accumulate in breast cyst fluid. The body's desperately making a storage area for them. And they get there because they are leaking them into the blood, which you're not supposed to do. And this is what goes along with health problems. If you have health problems of any type, you are leaking bile into your blood. And the bile contains toxins like vitamin A, and it contains toxins like copper and manganese and all sorts of these other toxic things that you don't want in there. You don't want these things floating around your blood. We are self-poisoning. You're not under attack from viruses. Viruses show up in toxic situations. What am I telling you that happens is you self-poison when you dump bile and you leak it into your blood. What if whatever the thing they call viruses are is simply something that triggers a bile dump and then you self-poison? Why would you feel so bad? How could you feel so bad so quickly and yet be able to get over it? And then people will say, well, that's your immune system. Your immune system is a cleanup crew. Your immune system helps take the nastiness out of your blood to the lymph nodes, which then can make it to your liver. That's when you think of your immune system, just think of your garbage crew going around picking up garbage. Well, where'd the garbage come from? That's what we're talking about. So now somebody on Twitter just sent me a message about how they had they were asking about polycystic kidney disease, and or they were saying they had polycystic kidney disease and polycystic liver disease. And I said cysts store bile. So I just want to show you the connection. So here is the gist of where I'm going to go with this. With polycystic liver disease and polycystic kidney disease, you are storing bile, among other things, in those cysts. Now, normally, your kidneys should not have to deal with very much bile if your bile was leaving via the poop, correct? If all your bile was leaving via the poop and not leaking into your blood, there wouldn't be any going to your kidneys. So if your kidneys are getting cystic with bile, that means you have a lot of bile in your blood, which would mean you probably have some cholestasis, some liver-related problems. So I'm just going to post a bunch of papers here. Sorry I didn't get to the live stream again. I've just been, we're really getting everything set so we can get this message out to more people. So here's the first one. I'm just going to read the last line of it. Overall, biliary tract disease seems to be a distinct and important extrarenal complication of ADPKD. So let me translate that sentence. Biliary tract disease is bile duct disease. That's basically cholestasis. Okay? They're leaking toxic bile. So they're saying overall, bile duct disease, cholestasis, leaking bile, seems to be a distinct and important extrarenal, that means outside of the kidneys, complication of autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease. They're connected is what they're saying. Okay? Well, how would they be connected? Well, if you're getting too much bile in your blood, if your liver was having problems, it might get cystic or cholestatic and all that stuff. And then the kidneys get cystic. Or this is the other thing you have to remember with systems like plumbing systems or filtering systems. Let's say because of genetics, this is an autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease. This is a genetic related kidney disease. Let's say the kidneys could not get rid of this stuff fast enough. They start becoming cystic, but somehow there's like a backlog in the system. And then the backlog starts making the liver have to make cysts. So see, it could feed forward, but it could also feed back. This is the way filtering systems work. And if you ever think that your liver is not a filter, it is. By definition, a filter is something that takes stuff out of something else. That's a filter. Does your liver take out toxins from your blood? Yes. Do your kidneys take out toxins from your blood? Yes. They are by definition filters. Your liver is a filter first, a sewage processing plant second, and a storage depot for toxins third. Or accumulate, whichever word you want to use if you're searching the literature. For people who say that your liver doesn't store toxins, oh my goodness, folks. Stop it. What do you think fatty liver is? What might the liver store in fat? Fat-soluble toxins like, oh, I don't know, vitamin A? I'm going to be writing my big eggs and choline thread on Twitter very soon, and I will turn it into a video, but I thought it was very interesting that, let me go over some things that are yellow. Fatty liver's yellow. Look it up. Vitamin A is yellow. Lecithin, aka choline, aka phosphatidylcholine, aka lysophosphatidylcholine, which is what is found in eggs, is yellow. Egg yolks are yellow. You know, there's a significant study linking fatty liver to egg consumption. Egg yolk consumption is really what it means. Weird that all those things are yellow and that you use phosphatidylcholine as part of the LRAT enzyme to store vitamin A in your liver. Weird that they're all the same color. They might be connected. You know, I think it was a 3.5 times higher risk of fatty liver disease for 2 or more eggs a week in an Iranian study. I'm going to cover all that research on a video. Anyway, here we go. Another study, polycystic kidney disease, biliary dysgenesis in a patient with Larson's syndrome. Just go over what dysgenesis is. I'm going to look it up just so I know to say it correctly. Dysgenesis, defective or abnormal development of an organ, especially of the gonads. Okay. So an improperly formed bile ducts, which would cause what? Cholestasis, toxic bile leakage, and polycystic kidney disease are showing up together. Okay, interesting. So let me see. This one came up. Pathophysiology of childhood polycystic kidney diseases. New insights into disease-specific therapy. Let me find this one. Let's go. Okay. Is that congestive heart failure? Wait, let me find out what ARPKD is. Oh, autosomal recessive. Okay. So let me just read this paragraph. So this is in kids. I believe this is kids who are born with bile duct malformations, dysgenesis. Okay. And I'll explain it once we're done. Despite improved survival, morbidity of this dual organ disease, so they're talking about, I believe they're talking about kidney and liver at the same time, is significant due to A, renal collecting duct, ectatic cysts, renal collecting duct. Interesting. And marked renal enlargement. When things store things, they would have to enlarge, wouldn't they? Leading to hypertension and progressive renal failure. And B, biliary dysgenesis leading to abnormal bile duct formation with progressive periportal congenital hepatic fibrosis, CHF. Okay. So that they're saying congenital hepatic fibrosis is CHF. It's not congestive heart failure like I assumed first. Patients with congenital hepatic fibrosis develop portal hypertension with resulting esophageal or gastric varices. Swollen, like varicose veins in their esophagus or their stomach. What did I say was related to reflux? Bile in your stomach? Boy, do you think this could be bile going up there causing that? Enlarged hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids are varicose veins of your butt. Splenomegaly, hypersplenism, protein-losing enteropathy, and gastrointestinal bleeding. In addition to congenital hepatic fibrosis, non-obstructed dilation, so it's not obstructed, it's not blocked, but it's getting bigger. Non-obstructed dilation of the intrahepatic inside the liver bile ducts and dilation of the common bile duct occurs in over 30% of autosomal recessive polycystic kidney disease patients. Do you see what I'm just trying to say? This is not something you have to like know everything about. There's a connection between liver cysts and liver and bile duct problems and kidney diseases because the kidney is the feed forward. If your liver can't deal with the bile and get rid of the bile, if it goes back into the blood, it goes to the kidneys. But again, if the kidneys can't deal with it and there's like kind of this feedback mechanism where the bile is building up in the blood, then your liver may start making storage cysts for it. Okay? Or, ladies, your breasts might start making cysts for it. Especially if there's copper. There's a very strong correlation, in my professional opinion, of high copper and women having issues with their breasts or their other sexual organs. Endometriosis, PCOS, simple menstrual problems. Copper is always involved. Excess copper. Here, let's just go. Type 4 choledochal cyst with polycystic kidney disease, a case report. Well, let me look up choledo. Let me. What does that mean? Oh, wait, I missed my N. Oh, there it is. Colidocal or colidocal cysts are congenital conditions, so birth defects basically, involving cystic dilatation, so that's opening up of bile ducts. So the cyst is actually pushing the bile duct open. And it just so happens to show up with polycystic kidney disease. Interesting, no? We'll get through these real quick. Biliary dysgenesis in the PCK rat, an orthologous model of autosomal recessive polycystic kidney disease. Now, I want to make sure this one could be interesting. Let me look at this one for a second. Hold on. I want to find out. Let me look up. Okay, orthologous, describing homologous genes that are descendants of a single gene in a common ancestor. Okay. Let me just read the last sentence here. Let me see what PCK is. What are they saying PCK is? That must just be a specific type of rat. Or polycystic kidney rat, yeah. Okay, so we're going to assume it's polycystic kidney. Our results suggest that the polycystic kidney rat, so it's like a rat they genetically bred to get polycystic kidney disease, is a useful model for studies of biliary cystogenesis and treatment options of inherited cystic liver disease. Do you think they're connected? What would connect these two things other than bile? Where does the bile flow? Through the bile ducts, maybe? Should it be in your blood? No. How did it get to the fibrocystic breast? Through the blood. What's that mean? The next detox organ it hits is the kidneys. And then, yeah, I won't worry about that one. That one's not very useful. But anyway, so I just wanted to go through that stuff. So key takeaways here. If you have health problems, you have toxic bile in your blood. What do we do to fix it? People in the Love Your Liver program are doing these things. They are avoiding or minimizing. We can't avoid all toxins. That's ludicrous. They are minimizing or reducing their toxin intake. By doing this, your body is able to detox faster. They are facilitating the excretion, proper excretion of toxic bile. And they are possibly using several basic supplements to restore their mineral status, essential mineral status, not toxic mineral status, which is more minerals than you think. And they're using other simple basic supplements to help move things along. Make secondary bile acids. I've found several things. Do you know that apples have been shown, the pectin in apples has been shown to reduce secondary bile acid formation? Interesting. Do you know that apples, I went over this about how apples are the healthiest food by far. They've been shown to be by far the healthiest food. And if you're spending money on superfood, plant foods, you're wasting your money. Eat apples. Weird that they've been shown to be such a healthy fruit, and there's research on them reducing secondary bile acids in the blood. What a coincidence, eh? So, all these things align. This is a new paradigm of medicine. I'm going to get attacked for this strongly at some point. Why are they not studying bile in the blood more? Go look up sepsis and how much bile is in the blood in sepsis where you could die. So, moving on. Let's go. So, let's get to Ramon's question since he did the super chat. And then I'll get to the other questions. From an evolutionary perspective, how were our ancestors who only had access to seasonal/limited fruit able to get rid of bile? As always, thank you. Well, you are welcome, Ramon. So, the thing that, I mean, they're gonna have fiber. Like the idea that humans only ate meat is ludicrous. Why would people walk by, things, plant foods that they can eat that don't fight back other than chemicals? But why would they walk by it? There was a group in it was a South American. I have this I'll have to figure out where I have that article. But there was a South American kind of like indigenous tribe, back in the Amazon. And the quote from them, they had all these like, they were like small, kind of like small, like deer, very small deer, I think, hanging. The authors were there talking to them. And they had all this meat hanging. But yet, these natives would say that if they ran out of their staple starchy food, that they were starving. They had all this meat hanging. Like carnivores would have been like, "Oh, this is amazing," and they had all. But if they said that if they ran out of their starchy source, they were starving, something like that. That they had no food. So, and then there's the article about, where is it? There are other things. Here we go. Zanzibar, ScienceDaily.com. Zanzibar monkeys eat charcoal to counteract toxins. Weird that the monkeys have figured this out, yet humans, we're all being scared to death of using charcoal because it might cause nutrient deficiency, which I challenge you. Go out and find any proof that any human anywhere has ever gotten a nutrient deficiency from charcoal and share it with me, please. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying people have looked and they haven't found it. And if you submit me the apple juice study where they put some charcoal into apple juice, just don't even bother. They put some charcoal in apple juice and they saw a couple of the vitamins go down a little bit. That, seriously, don't submit the apple juice study. That's the only thing. That's what people base it on. They're like, you can't take your charcoal with your supplements. No, that's a bunch of horse stuff. Keep it family friendly. No. There is no research anywhere that charcoal causes any problems. So things that can help. Okay, well, first of all, do we think our ancestors 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 3,600 years ago, were they getting injected, which causes liver injury? Okay, the word liver injury means cholestasis, means toxic bile leaking into the system. That's really what it means. So were our ancestors 100, 150 years ago, 1,000 years ago, further, were they getting injected? And I hope you know what I mean by that. No, they were not. So they were not getting liver injuries from that. So the thing you have to understand, as your liver gets more and more injured, you become slower and slower at detoxing because more and more of your bile is going into your blood. If it's in your blood, then you're loading up your kidneys, you're getting kidney problems. If it's coming out your skin, you're getting skin problems. It's not something you want. But so that's the weird thing is, so you have to look in context where people are like, but the Okinawans ate tons of sweet potatoes, where they were not orange sweet potatoes. And I'm going to bet those Okinawans who are 100 years old now were not getting poked, had not taken pharmaceuticals, were not eating glyphosate sprayed foods. They were not doing fad diets. Do you see where I'm going with this? So we can't take, people always want to go, well, what about these folks? Don't these people prove all your things wrong? And I'm like, I only care about people who live today. And if through your life, this is not just directed at you, Ramon, this is at anybody. This is where we have to use our brains to understand we are different now. They're putting fluoride in the water. They're putting vitamin A in fortified foods. They're putting vitamin D in fortified foods. Who knows what the heck they're feeding to the meat animals? The rain is filthy. You guys have been reading about the aluminum levels in the soil these days? Where's that coming from? We are under assault toxin wise. So we have to work on more things than anybody ever had to think about before. This is our burden. And if you're sick, if you have been made sick, whether you did it yourself on accident or whether somebody else did it to you, whether you were born with jaundice and you started behind the 8 ball, we have to minimize more things so that we can fix the problem. Right? If you break your leg, it's probably best to not walk on it too much, right? So you're avoiding something that is normally healthy, normally fine, but it could cause you problems if you do it when you're sick, like with a broken leg. So the exceptions tend to prove the rule, but how would they have pooped it out? They were probably eating some sort of plant foods, and they weren't toxic. Do you think the fish were as toxic with mercury back then? Probably not. Were they eating, I mean, when you look at the foods of the Bible, there's only 2 vegetables mentioned: onions and leeks. All the rest were beans and grains. Well, beans and grains have a lot of soluble fiber in them. But onions and leeks, and those are not brightly colored fruits and vegetables. Potatoes. Those have been a staple for a long time. And if you didn't know, people have been heavily peeling vegetables, and they peel fruits, of course, but they've been heavily peeling fruits and vegetables for a very long time. The idea that the most nutritious part of the plant is in the skin. Why do we put walls up around things we want to protect? Why do we put our best defenses on the walls? Because you don't want anybody penetrating in the first place. So where would plants put their defenses? In the skin. Should you be eating the plant's heaviest defenses? No. Why would the plant put the poisons on the outside of the skin and not have it on the inside? Is it maybe because having it on the inside would be toxic to things like the seeds? Peel your fruits and vegetables, folks. Don't eat the skin. Peel them heavily. But were they probably eating some sort of fiber? Yes. Oh my gosh, you guys should watch here on YouTube the video. It's a short video of it's a clip of Joe Rogan and the More Plates, More Dates guy talking about the disasters of the keto and carnivore approach, where Rogan's talking about 2 weeks of diarrhea, pooping out like a black liquid. Oh my goodness. But why would someone get diarrhea if they were eating a carnivore diet, especially if it were high fat? Well, let me tell you, an excess of bile acids in your gut in studies has been shown to cause diarrhea. Okay. On a carnivore diet, do you have much fiber? Any fiber to soak up bile so that all of it is not just directly touching your intestines? No, you got none. So then, is a carnivore diet, the way most people are going to do it, is it going to be high fat, which causes you to dump more bile? Yes. So you got a high fat diet with no fiber, and your body wants to get rid of this toxic black bile, but it's just dumping it and there's nothing to soak it up. And they're talking about just these. He was saying he couldn't trust a fart. He said it's hilarious. You should watch it. He said you can't trust your butthole on the carnivore diet. You can't trust a fart because you might leak. That doesn't sound like poop to me. That sounds like liquid. What liquid are we talking about here? So what their body probably did over those 2 weeks of adaptation is they just stopped making as much bile, because your body's smart and it says, if I keep bathing my guts in bile, this is going to end badly. Go look up lithocholic acid and cancer. Especially here, let's just do this real quick. Where is it? You guys gotta know this. I've said this before. What they're going to try to do is they're going to start trying to say that certain bile acids, if you have more of them in the blood, you're going to have less of a certain disease. When really all they're saying is that of these people who are unhealthy with bile in their blood, these people with this recipe or composition of bile seem to have less of this disease, and these people have more. That's all they're saying. They're saying they're picking like the best of the worst. Okay. I'm just going to read this quote from let me just get this in here. Where was it? This is the first line of it. High levels of bile acids in the colon may correlate with an increased risk of colon cancer, but the underlying mechanisms are not known. High-fat diets have been connected to colon cancer. Are you following me here? What does fat do? It causes a bile dump. It also increases your, it decreases your bifidobacteria, which low bifido, I believe, has also been connected to colon cancer. And high-fat diets have been shown to cause cholestasis or toxic bile leakage. High-fat diets will cause a dysbiosis. Well, the high-fat diet will cause more bile dumping. You take a dysbiosis combined with lots of bile dumping, you get lots of secondary bile acids in the gut. The secondary bile acids damage the gut. And then the secondary the high-fat diet will cause cholestasis. You will then absorb those leaky secondary bile acids, and they will go into your system. And as we showed in 6 of the 12 fibrocystic breast disease tissues, they found lithocholic acid in the fibrocystic breast tissue. And then they were saying that that was probably going to be linked to more breast cancer. Are you following me here? This is what we fix. I'm the only person out there who's talking about this. But Anthony Mawson, in his papers, talks about vitamin A toxicity and cholestasis and leaking bile into the blood. And he's saying that the vitamin A that's in the bile leaking into your blood causes lots of the problems. And I agree with him. I'm just saying there's other things in there that cause problems too. Okay. So that's what I got, Ramon. We can't compare old times to these times. But yeah, even if you go, I have an article on, let me find it. I have an article on my forum about the foods of the Bible. And this would have been people on a fairly low vitamin A diet, even though people are going to say, but they ate dairy. And you're going to be like, do you think people 2,000, 3,000 years ago were eating a lot of dairy? Give me a break. It was a treat when they got it, I'm sure. You can, like, people think of dairy like we have it today, where it's like in every product. You got you got sour cream, you got half and half, you got milk, you got yogurt, you got all this dairy. There was no refrigeration, and dairy was not just going to sit around forever. And remember, folks, if you wanted cream or butter, that means there was skim milk left. And what did they do in, like, the times of the Little House on the Prairie, even that recently, if you want to call it that? They fed that to the pigs to fatten them up. Milk is designed to make animals grow. If you're an adult drinking milk and you're getting fat, you need to know you're drinking nature's ultimate growth food. And growth can be fat or muscle. Anyway. So again, just a reminder, if you're here and you want to help the station, the channel grow, just click out of the chat, like the video. If you're here afterwards, comment, like the video. If you want a question answered first, I'm going to get into other questions now. If you want a question answered first, you can do a super chat, and we're off. Okay. Sir Vancelot was, just a comment from Sir Vancelot. Need to watch Wardy Harmon. Need to watch Wardy's new skin video, having painful red raw spots in my scalp lately. Can somebody post, maybe Will or somebody else, can somebody post the link to Wardy's recent skin video that I did with her, that would be awesome. Let me just go check something while we're here. Dang it, they don't have, oh wait, there it is. Wait. Hold on, what I'm looking up is, I just decided to look up serum bile and psoriasis. It just popped into my head. Well, they did this whole study, or they wrote about it at least. And they mention bile, but they don't really get into it. And just so you know, if they're ever giving bile acids for a condition, they're either shutting down some of the bile acid production in a certain way, or they're just changing the recipe of the bile, and you see one condition go down and another condition come up. Chemotherapy is known to cause fatty liver. So they may give a poison, and you see the cancer, which I've written about on Twitter about how cancer and bile acids go together. So they stop your liver making bile. That's what chemo and radiation, that's what these things do. Poisons can stop you from making bile. What happens when you stop making bile? Where do you think your body's still trying to make it, but where do you think it goes? Where do you think it gets stored? It gets stored in your liver. What is fatty liver? Your liver's making more storage for fat-soluble poisons. That's fatty liver. Okay. But yeah, Wardy did a video with me. If somebody can post that link, that'd be great. Good morning, Will. Simon asks, what are factors that might show up in a low metal pattern, like low iron and low copper? I have heard from someone that 10 milligrams of B2 alone normalized both, so probably helping liver's utilization. When I see low copper in a person, which is rare on a blood test, I see low hair copper, I ignore it. It means nothing. Low blood copper, low serum copper means that copper is getting stuck in the liver. It's a sick liver. Low copper people are my most sensitive people. They've often tried to take copper and they feel much, much worse, which doesn't make sense in a low copper person now, does it? Or they try to eat more copper foods and they feel worse. That doesn't make sense now, does it? Unless they were really toxic in copper and they couldn't get it out. Do you remember earlier how I said serum copper doesn't reflect tissue copper? Serum vitamin A, retinol doesn't reflect tissue vitamin A, especially in the liver. And as they just said in that other one, you could have high bile acids in the breast cysts and still have low in the blood. Are you seeing a pattern here? Let's just say that certain groups were trying to hide the cause of disease from us. What could they study? The blood. What would they avoid studying? The tissues and the liver itself. And then you've got all these people out there trying to act so smart, being like, the blood says this, the blood says this, the blood says that. Your body desperately tries to keep your blood as clean as it can, or else you die. Your body picks the slow death by storing it in the tissues, and therefore that is why the blood does not necessarily reflect the tissues. Low iron, when I see low iron in a woman, I start going, how's your bleeding? Your menstrual bleeding. All right, and you start asking them, are you losing blood from anywhere else? Like, let's say somebody had horrible hemorrhoids and they're losing blood. Well, they're going to have low iron. That happens. Somebody's donating blood too often. I drove myself anemic with donating blood too often. I donated 5 times every 2 months, 5 times in a row. I drove myself anemic. For those of you out there doing certain protocols and donating blood all the time, and you're feeling worse and worse and worse, you're not detoxing. They're making you anemic. You're losing more blood than you're replacing. And if you're not testing your ferritin, and they keep drawing blood from you, and you keep feeling worse, they're making you worse, but they don't want to show it because they can't order bloods. You should order your own bloods and get a ferritin. See how bad they're making you. Copper people are the most sensitive. Low copper people, generally they fit into my under category. Low iron, low copper, low calcium. They tend to fit into my under category. They tend to be underweight. I talk about this more in the program, in the Love Your Liver program. It is a sicker liver. The liver is not making as much bile generally. Overtypes, overweight, higher numbers on labs tend to make more bile. So they also tend to store it more, which is why they get fatter very easily. I'm an overtype. If you tend to gain weight when you're sick, you tend to be an overtype. Tend. I'm going to emphasize that word, tend. Are there any guaranteed patterns in medicine? There are no guaranteed patterns in medicine. Underweights, as they get sicker, tend to get more underweight. I've gone over this example before, but I really think it's a great example of the typical body's response to alcohol, alcoholism, alcohol abuse. Most people are overs. Look at America, right? Most people are getting fat. Some people are getting skinny. If you look at the longevity data, the underweight people actually die the earliest because they're sicker. Overweight people still die earlier than they should, but they die a bit later than the underweight people because they're better at storing the toxins. Okay? They pick the slow death. They're better at the slow death. But I want you to think about the long-term alcohol progression generally. Somebody's an alcoholic, and think of this in terms of the liver. Somebody's an alcoholic. In the early days of their alcohol abuse, they tend to gain weight, right? They get fatter. This is normal for alcohol. Puts on weight, storing toxins. So they gain weight. Now, what happens as the alcohol abuse progresses and their liver starts getting cirrhotic? They start losing weight, right? And they get really, really skinny. And then the only thing, they're getting all their calories all day from alcohol, but they get really, really skinny, except for their big bellies typically, which is probably their big old fatty liver. And organomegaly, their organs are getting bigger because their organs are all full of toxicity, which is why you don't eat the organs of animals, because that's where they tend to store their toxins. So you can see in one person, they could go from overweight, and as their liver gets sicker, they go to underweight. When we have underweight people, they are the most challenging to fix. They have the longest way to go. And that tends to go along with the low patterns. Low ferritin, low copper, low calcium. You don't have to have all of them. Not by any means. But when people start to understand the over and under types that I go over in the Love Your Liver program, it starts to make more sense to them. If somebody's like, I've been sick my entire life and I've been underweight my entire life. You were born with a messed up liver, or it happened soon after you were born. Whether it was an antibiotic or a pokey or whatever. Okay? The B2 probably antidoted some sort of poison that was in those people and made things look better for a while. That's a lot of B2 though. If I recall correctly, I don't. Most high-dose vitamins are simply antidoting poisons that are already in the system. And I stick by that. So I don't see a name here. It's Hi, Dr. Smith. I have my whole family following your program. Well, that's awesome. Can you talk about sinus congestion and how it relates to everything? Is that a sign of detox or toxicity? Well, it always depends on what phase you're in. I have always been through my life. One of the first things I realized as a kid in terms of how food affected how I felt was when I would drink a glass of milk as like a 15-year-old. As I was halfway into the glass of milk, I would start to get snotty and phlegmy. That was where I first started putting together that foods affected how I felt. Crazy, right? So I have been a very snotty, phlegmy, mucusy person my entire life. I remember I didn't really notice it. It was just kind of the way I was. Like I blew my nose fairly regularly. I'd have runny noses on occasion. It definitely, like, everybody's got their weak spot. Mine was sinuses and making all that phlegm. I do believe that this is the body trying to get rid of toxins. Right? I mean, it's fluid that your body wants it to leave, right? You blow your nose, you spit it out, you want to get it out of you. Sometimes, a lot of times, it can be yellowish. Wow, what's yellow? Well, bile acids are yellow, and so is vitamin A. So I tend to think that this is a route of detox that the body's trying to use. Now, certain things could happen. I mean, there was one point in my my now defunct marriage where my ex said to me, she said, I think I was having a runny nose, and she said, "You've been a snotty person the entire time I've known you." And I was like, that really hit me hard because I hadn't ever really admitted that to myself. And then I thought about it for a second and I went, you're probably right. Or you are right. So, but am I as snotty now that I've been doing this detox approach for 4+ years? No, absolutely not. I have nowhere near as snotty. My seasonal allergies have diminished immensely. Seasonal allergies, I want you to think about pollen. Go look up pollen and carotenoids. What color's pollen? Typically yellowish, orange-ish. Gosh, what might it have a lot of in it? Carotenoids? What if when you get pollen in your nose and you react to it, it's actually a toxic reaction to the carotenoids in your nose? We feed our animals lots of vitamin A in their foods. What is one of the places your body will store vitamin A? What happens when people eat too much vitamin A or eat too much carotenoids? What color does their skin turn? Yellowish or orangish, right? So let's say you had an animal that you unknowingly were poisoning with vitamin A, and they were storing it in their skin. And then the animal is shedding, it's losing skin cells. And you breathe them in. And you get vitamin A on your sinus tissues. Is it a toxic reaction? Interesting, right? So, I mean, you can have toxic reactions. Like here's another example. You can just have, breathing smoke, cigarette smoke, fire smoke. It irritates your nose, right? Your body wants to get it out, right? Does that mean you're allergic to smoke or cigarette smoke? It doesn't mean you're allergic. It means you're breathing in a poison. So maybe a lot of the allergies that we think are like seasonal allergies and stuff like that are just reactions to poisons. What about that? Sinus congestion. These are things that if you guys think this is happening to you, that you definitely want to get into the Love Your Liver program, because I don't explain it completely out here because it's too much. But sinus congestion would be a sign of bile and toxicity in your blood. Okay? That's how it gets up there for your body to try to detox it through your nose or your spit. And they have shown carotenoids in saliva and in mucus. I put that on the forum before. Your body is trying to get rid of this stuff. Actually, why don't I go get that? I'll go get that article of mine. And if anybody's like, oh, he put this on his website, it's obviously like biased. I always put the links to the studies. You guys should know this. My goodness. Why would I go to somebody's private website? I'm like, so I can type an article, you. Ugh, jeez. So I can find all this stuff very quickly. So I can share it. Anyway, the title of the article was Vitamin A is excreted / detox through feces, urine, sweat, saliva, tears, and even the breath. Your body wants this out so bad. So bad. So if you got sinus stuff, you got toxicity in your blood. That's what that means. If you are doing the detox and this issue were getting stronger, you're pushing the detox too hard. You're getting more bile into your blood because the thing is, folks, this cholestasis, this toxic leakage of bile, it doesn't just go away just because you know what it is now. So if you start pushing too many things, let's cover that. This is a very important concept. The cause of your health problems is toxic bile in your blood. Or you could just say it's bile. The cause of your problems is bile. The solution to your problems lies in the bile. Cause of your problems in the bile, solutions in the bile. What do we want to do? We want to get rid of the bile. We want to have less toxic bile because you're going to keep making it forever. And it is the bile that causes the cholestasis. As the bile gets toxic, it damages everything it touches. So if you make it less toxic, it does less damage. If you fix your gut dysbiosis, you don't make as many of the most toxic secondary bile acids. You see how this works? So we want to make the bile less toxic. That takes a while, though. You still have all the stuff stored in you. And then we want the bile to stay where it's supposed to go, which is from the liver, in the bile ducts, in the intestines, and travel down the intestines to be pooped out. That's optimal, okay? Or in the meantime, while you have health problems, you have bile leakage. The bile is what causes the toxic bile leakage. So if you start pushing things, most of the things that we do in the program have the potential to increase your bile production and increase your bile excretion. Think about this. Let's say you have a leak in one of your pipes in your house, but it only leaks when you turn on the sink. Let's just say this. This is just an example, right? It only leaks when you turn on the sink. Well, and let's say that sink, like your bile production, is going to be on a little bit all the time. So there's a drip, right? Your sink is on because that's the way the bile is. The bile just keeps making. Your body just keeps making some bile. So the sink is on, and then you've got a drip. That's just like normal, standard. That's your idle of your body. But you have a leak that you haven't fixed yet. And when you turn the sink, the faucet on higher, because let's say you want to use the faucet or you want to get rid of that water, the leak gets stronger too, which then makes your symptoms stronger because the leak is not fixed yet. This is huge concept. Just because this is very, very important. I'm not saying anybody's wrong for not getting this. This is why I'm explaining it. If you push things you have to kind of reduce the toxicity of the bile and keep the excretion of the production and the excretion of the bile to a certain level. Because if you start doing a bunch of things that increase the bile production and you still have a leak, simple example. Let's say you were I'm just making this up. The numbers, I mean. Let's say you were leaking 50% of your bile into your blood. Just throwing out a number here to show you the numbers, okay? You're leaking 50% of your bile into your blood. You're really sick. And let's say you made 10 units of bile in a day. So you were going to leak 5 of them into your blood. Okay? and you start doing things on the program or doing what we call agitators on the program, which increase bile dumping, and it increased your bile production in a day to 20 units. But your leak was still 50%. So instead of 10 units in a day and leaking 5 of them into the blood, now all of a sudden you increased your bile production to 20 units in a day, and now you've leaked 10 into your blood and you've doubled your symptoms. Do you see? This is how this works. This is how, when you have flares of things, when things flare up, there's usually a cause that caused you to dump more bile, and you leaked the same percentage, but it's more bile leaking into your blood. That's how it works. So if you were doing the program and things are getting worse, you're pushing too hard. Bile's still toxic. Bile is still leaking. So if you push it too hard, that's what's going on. If you still just have sinus congestion because you've had it for years, it may take a while to fix. This is not, if you're doing this work, settle in for 2, 3, 4 years. Will you see the problems get better along the way? Yes. You can improve at any time on the program, but for everything to be gone, like sinus congestion was probably my oldest symptom. It's going to be the first thing that you had is going to be the last thing to leave. That's the order of healing. That's well accepted in the alternative realm. That things tend to go away opposite of the order that they came. So I hope that answers it. And she said, "Thank you so much, following from Genoa, Italy." I'm sorry, I didn't know. Sorry, I didn't know if there's no name here, so I don't know if that was a male or a female. But anyway, you are very welcome. So Gretchen says, "Good morning, happy Friday. Happy Friday to all of you. Have I seen any allergies reversed as the liver heals?" Like, yes. We have people's allergies generally improve all the time. Takes a while. It takes a while. Here, let me just go do, what am I looking for? Serum. I just wanted to see. Ooh, wait. Here's a key word if you're searching for things: metabolomics. I think I'm saying it right. Metabolomics. Either way, oftentimes that means they are studying bile. Let me see. They didn't study bile in this one. That's too bad. But they had a serum metabolomics study of patients with allergic rhinitis. I was really hoping they were going to study bile in that one. Oh, give me a good one here. So here's an example of sepsis. This is a vet study. I just found it when I was searching for the bile in allergies. Here we go. Resting serum bile acid concentrations were significantly higher in the septic compared to the non-septic groups, the ill control and orthopedic control groups. So they had 2 control groups. So sepsis is a bile dump, self-poisoning. However it happens, that's why things go bad so quickly, whether it's the liver leaking or whatever. Okay? So I want to find something on rhinitis. Let's see. Let me just do allergy. Wait. Use a fancier word. Atopy or atopic. That's like allergic type reactions. No, not finding a lot. They don't study this much. I wonder why. One more. The old allergy word. Not that one. Nope, not that one. Okay, we're not finding anything right now. Anyway. Okay. Hi, Dan. Hi, Allie. So Ramon says he doesn't understand how Dr. Smith doesn't have millions of subscribers by now. I want you all to understand, if you're here and you're listening to this, as the saying on Twitter goes or around the internet, you're built different. I mean, imagine telling people that the root of your disease is inside of you. In a way, you're telling people that they're unclean, they're dirty. And people will do detox and they'll be like, I'm going to do a weekend cleanse and a week-long detox, and I'm going to fast for a couple days. And they think they're clean. They have decades worth of toxicity in them. Maybe they put it all in. Maybe they did all the damage in a couple months. Accutane folks know all about this. People who got floxed, ciprofloxacin and fluoroquinolone antibiotics, what that did to you, why you got so sick so fast was because it caused a liver injury. And you started leaking your toxic bile into your bloodstream way more than you did before. The work here, why this will probably never be extremely popular, is because people first have to take responsibility for their lot in life. For those of you who were born, let's say, with jaundice, that's not your fault. You didn't cause that. But until you take responsibility for the situation that you are now in, that you now have an idea of how to fix, I'm giving you an idea of how to fix. And if people are like, oh my gosh, the network is too expensive. No, it's not going to be free. I like to, personally, I'm a fan of having food on my table and a roof over my head. So yeah, I'm going to charge for this. People want information to be free, but information is what I sell. And it's how I put together the information that is how I make a living. So no, it's not going to be free. I'm sorry. But asking people to take responsibility for this is a huge thing. Telling people that the poisons are inside of you. And then telling people that these are the actions that you're going to have to take, and some of the things that you thought, some of the most sacred cows you had in health were completely wrong, and you poisoned yourself, which I had to admit to myself. I mean, all of us here have to admit this to us. I mean, do you see, most people, the NPCs in society today, the normies, will not do any of that. That's hard work. So I'm never going to be super popular. I will be popular to the people who take responsibility, understand that this is the most powerful information they've probably ever gotten about their health, and they want to take action on it. If you are here listening to this, you are built different. You are not normal. Who wants to be normal these days? Normal is disease. I love when people are like, but I like in the studies where they say the healthy controls. I'm like, where'd you find the healthy controls from? Did they just not have the disease you were looking for? So, Will says, what I'm doing is like poetry, and most people hate poetry. I do look at myself as a creative, taking these concepts and linking them together. I do not know why, other than Anthony Mawson was doing it. Grant. Don't ever think I'm trying to take any spotlight away from what the work that Grant did and the work that Anthony Mawson did. I counted 34 different papers. I listed them all in the Love Your Liver program, one of the introductory articles of the program. The 34 articles that Anthony Mawson connects vitamin A to diseases through cholestasis and the liver leaking vitamin A into the bloodstream. I got the idea from Anthony Mawson. The vitamin A toxicity came from Grant Genereux. And I've just simply taken it further and found more links. I'm not the one who comes up with the brilliant ideas first. I just take them and make them better and figure out how to make them work for people. Anthony Mawson is the researcher, the scientist guy. Grant is the engineer who took on his health problem and figured it out. And then I'm the guy who makes it work and applicable, and I troubleshoot for people to do it themselves so that people don't have to do Grant's diet. I love Grant. I love the man. He comes on my inner circle inside the network once every 2 months now to do a Q&A with us. I love the man. I could never do that diet. I could never eat beef or bison, black beans, and brown or white rice 3 meals a day in a soup-ish. He makes it into a soup. I could never do that. I didn't want to do it. So I found other ways to do it. We've got all sorts of variations. People do all sorts of variations on a low vitamin A diet inside the program. There's kind of the more extreme ones where people kind of do an all muscle meat carnivore diet where they add some fiber to it, some soluble fiber. There's the cowboy diet where some people have had real good luck with like doing beef and beans. Some people do, meat and oats. I tend to do a lot of muscle meat and bananas and apples. I do some low vitamin A vegetables, but that's the gist of my current diet. Now, was my diet very different at the start? I used to do tons of beans and tons of oats, but I'm not as sick anymore. And I've also had years to figure out what feels best for me. So if you go and you say, well, Dr. Smith eats this, I should eat that. No, that's not what we teach in the program at all. You are to find out what works best for you. This is what we teach people in the program, is you listen to your body. Here's the principles that you go by. A big one is lower vitamin A foods. So you pick from those, and then you figure out what feels the best to you. That's that. So, Allie asks, so is it not good to have bile in the stomach by itself without food? You should never have bile in your stomach. Never. So one of the things, so this is an important concept too. One of the things about especially overtypes is they make a lot of bile. They make more bile. They're more likely to have acid reflux. They make a lot of bile, and some of it goes backwards up. Like things are supposed to move down your intestines, right? They're not supposed to go back up to your stomach. That's a problem. So things are going back up, probably because there's a lot of bile. Bile in your stomach without food. Well, let me tell you, what is morning sickness in pregnancy? It's bile in the stomach. That's what it is. Another thing that happens in pregnancy, especially what's called intrahepatic. Oh, wait, I forgot the. So before we go into pregnancy, I'm going to be wrapping it up here pretty soon. And this paper real quick. So sometimes, like I'm going into the Love Your Liver network right now. Okay. Find it. There it is. Here's the paper. Is normal pregnancy cholestatic? That was the question they asked themselves. Is normal pregnant normal? Remember how I just said nobody's healthy out there just about? And they're doing a paper called Is Normal Pregnancy Cholestatic? Leaking toxic bile into the blood. Is it? That's the question they asked. What was the answer at the end? It is concluded that normal pregnancy is associated with mild subclinical cholestasis. So now they're saying normal pregnancy is associated with a disease state. Okay, so then we get into morning sickness in pregnancy. I'm saying it's bile going backwards up into your stomach, which is cholestasis by definition. Bile stagnation, bile going the wrong directions. Okay. So they get nausea. I'll give you a tip. Generally, if you're nauseous, you got bile in your stomach. You got a tummy ache, you probably got bile in your stomach. Just generalities. So what can they do with intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy? One of the things that happens with intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy is women get very itchy. They get pruritus, Pruritis. Knowing the detox order, which we went over today, liver to bile to poop is your best one. Then if you're leaking, it goes to your kidneys next. What's the third one? It's the skin. You don't want to detox through your skin if you don't have to. But these pregnant women have intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. They're getting so much bile in their blood, it's overwhelming their liver, it's overwhelming their kidneys, and it's coming out through your skin. Guess what they give them? They give them charcoal. Charcoal can soak up bile in your intestines only, in your digestive tract only. It soaks up bile so well, it will constipate the heck out of people because bile touching your intestines is your trigger to poop. Not enough bile touching your intestines, you get constipated. Too much bile touching your intestines, you get diarrhea. So, one of the things you can do to relieve, like straight up bile, if you have straight up bile, just bile, on the, what am I thinking? Straight bile, neat bile in your stomach. It's like hot lava. That's the analogy I use. Just think of it as hot lava. Undiluted hot lava. And you're absorbing it through your stomach, which means that hot lava is now going into your blood. Doesn't sound good, does it? One of the solutions to morning sickness, nausea in pregnancy, could be any time of day, is to eat. What would eating do to the bile? That's only the bile that's in your gut. It would, in a way, dilute the bile. The bile would mix with the food. And so instead of that bile like coating your stomach, like think that Pepto-Bismol commercial where they show the pink like coating everything, instead of the bile going backwards up and coating everything, undiluted, the food would hold some huge percentage of it away from the mucosa, away from the skin of your intestines, and it would relieve the symptom of your body telling you, I'm nauseous because I have too much bile in here coating my stomach. You put down food, it dilutes the bile, it holds the bile away from the mucosa, you feel better. Do you know, most of you Americans here, most of us didn't know this, I didn't know this, but in Europe, it's totally normal to use charcoal for all sorts of digestive issues. You get a stomach ache, you take some charcoal. I'm not advised. If you're constipated and you take charcoal, you may not poop for a day or 2 or 3. If you're constipated, you need to come in the network and we got stuff to help fix it. But there are things you can do. You could do, some people will do when they have acid reflux, they'll do fiber, like psyllium. What does soluble fiber do that's high in psyllium? It soaks up bile. If you didn't have enough bile in your intestines, soluble fiber can constipate you because it soaks up all the bile you had, and then it doesn't touch your guts and you don't get the trigger to poop. This is why people's fiber research has been so confusing, where some people say, well, we gave them more fiber and they pooped better. And then another guy went and he had people who had idiopathic constipation for years, where what I'm saying idiopathic, they didn't know the cause. They were just constipated and constipated and constipated and constipated. They just couldn't get out of it. And what he did was he put them on a extremely low fiber diet or a zero fiber diet. And over months and maybe a year, they started pooping better than they were before. They weren't getting any bile into their intestines. So he stopped them putting in the soluble fiber that soaked up the bile, and they had more bile touching their intestines, and they pooped better. This is why medicine is so confusing, is because they don't understand the causes of these things. And they don't understand that different people, like somebody with colitis, like diarrhea colitis, they've got way too much bile in their intestines, and it's really toxic. And their body's saying, get this ish out of here. It's super toxic. That's why a lot of times when people eat high-fat diets, they get diarrhea because they dump a bunch of bile into their intestines, and their body says, get this ish out of here. Whereas a lot of you ladies, especially ladies who have hypothyroid and stuff like that, you're not getting enough bile into your intestines, so you don't poop. Where is that bile going? It's going into your bloodstream, causing you symptoms like, oh, I don't know, it's going up to your thyroid, making you tired, all these other symptoms. And then eventually, if you get enough bile in your blood over time, usually once you have one autoimmune disease, you get another one, and then you get another one, and then you get another one, because the toxic bile going through your system is just breaking weak link after weak link in your chain. This is how it all falls apart, and this is why nobody out there is figuring out the solution. Because, this is the big because. If we really started saying that toxicity is the root cause of all of our diseases, what do you think this would do to industries? It would absolutely destroy them. They can't do it. Billions and trillions of dollars are at stake. They can never admit this. So they don't. So they keep, here's what they're doing in science. They keep looking at cell studies, in vivo studies, receptor studies. Let me give you a secret. Let me tell you a secret about what happens with cell studies from what I've noticed in the literature. Poisons, toxins look good in cell studies, while they look disastrous in long-term people studies. I call it the duration paradox. So if there was an industry if there was a group that wanted to poison us, wanted us sick and stupid and infertile and unhealthy and dying earlier, and they found that doing cell studies would make poisons look great short term and hide the fact that they were toxic long term, because there's no turnover of cells in a cell study. It's just one cell, one life, right? One life of the cell, I mean. Do you see? This is how they hide it from you. And then you got everybody on the internet going, well, you can't look at food recall, you can't look at dietary recall studies or food recall studies because they're notoriously inconsistent. And I go, well, so you're going to volunteer to go into the metabolic lab for 10 years of your life so we can see how eating eggs affects your health 10 years down the road? They'd be like, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go live my life. Well, then that's the best we got, bucko. But when I go and find studies from like 7 different countries showing that eating 1 or 2 eggs a day causes all sorts of diseases to increase, when it's happening in Iran and Japan and the US and Greece and all these places, you got to start going, maybe there's a pattern here we could look at. Huh. Yeah. So, anyway, But Allie was saying, I thought bile mixed into the food to break it down. You don't want bile in your stomach. Okay? No. Stomach is for stomach acid. Generally. You don't want bile going backwards. Here's the idea. This is a very important concept. So people think that I'm like saying you should not have any bile. No, I'm not saying that. You should not have bile going up into your stomach, and you should not have bile leaking into your blood. Bile is meant to go, it's made in your liver, it goes through the bile ducts, it goes into your intestines. It's supposed to head down your intestines, not back up. And it goes through the intestines and it mixes with your food. And whatever it does to the food that we need, it does. And then you reabsorb 95% of it in the enterohepatic circulation. Entero's gut, hepatic's liver. In a normal diet, you reabsorb 95% of that bile. It goes right back to the liver and it goes through the same process again. 5% is excreted in your poop on a normal diet. Let's say somebody's on a no fiber, all muscle meat, high fat, keto, whatever. They're on a no fiber diet. My estimate, my guess, I'll say it's a guess because I'm honest. My guess is that they poop out less than 1% of their bile, except in those first 2 weeks where they get the squirts of bile all the time because they have nothing to soak it up. See what I mean? But what I'm after is if your liver is making bile at a normal, healthy rate, and your bile is not toxic, and your bile is going the right direction and staying in the right pathway that God designed it for, it will do whatever it's supposed to do. Whatever good we believe that bile does, it will do. I'm not stopping anything about the normal process of bile. That's one thing that has to be understood. I simply am trying to get the body to run properly. If you go on the internet, everybody's like, bile is wonderful, bile is great, da, da, da. And I'm like, no. The bile in unhealthy people, in sick people, is sick bile. And we fix it by bringing in less toxins. We fix it by getting rid of more of the toxic bile. We also help get rid of more of it by keeping it in the places, in the bile, I call the bile pathway. And then we poop it out. Because of all the tubes in your body, your intestines and your bile ducts are the most well designed to deal with bile. But the bile gets so toxic, it even breaks those down. Think of your gallbladder. Your gallbladder is designed to hold bile. And people's bile is getting so toxic, it's even breaking down the gallbladder. It's breaking down the liver cells that make the bile. This is serious. So the first step we do is we put less toxins in. So think about it. If, let's say, carnivores were excreting less than 1% of their bile because they have no fiber to bind it. Oh, and then like Joe Rogan was saying, after the couple of weeks on the carnivore diet, he said his poops got really, really small and really, really dry. That's the lack of fiber in there to soak it up. So I want you to imagine the 2 weeks where he had the squirts, his body was still making a lot of bile. And it was dumping a lot of bile, and there was nothing to soak it up. So it was damaging his guts. Telling he couldn't trust a fart. He was leaking. And then after the 2 weeks, as his body adapted, and remember, your body can adapt for better or worse. As his body adapted, he probably started making less bile, which is why the diarrhea stopped. And then his poops were very small because there's not much left of meat. Once you digest meat, there's not much left. Poops were very small and dry because there's no fiber. So what can we do to improve an all muscle meat carnivore diet would very simply be to add some soluble fiber to it. But you got to do it gently. If you all muscle meat carnivores are out there doing this, just like the 2-week adaptation period to it, you got to introduce the soluble fiber slowly. because you haven't been getting rid of much soluble fiber or much bile. You haven't been getting rid of much bile once you were past that adaptation week, and your liver's been storing it up, and your liver is so desperate to get rid of it that you put a little soluble fiber in there, your liver gets very, very excited to dump a lot of bile so the fiber can soak it up, and you'll have a bad time. This is why there's all sorts of these adaptations. There's the keto flu, there's the carnivore 2 weeks or whatever. That's all these adaptation phases are simply bile shifts. That's what they are. What else explains it? Once you understand toxic bile theory, health starts to make sense, but you got to really understand it, which is what I try to do here. Now, if you want to know how to fix it, that's the Love Your Liver program. So, let's see. Well, I got to get going. I got to go do my inner circle, which is the private video Q&A that I do inside the Love Your Liver network. People get to ask questions. They get to submit them over the week, and then I answer them all. So if you're ever interested in asking me the questions you want me to answer, that's inside the Love Your Liver network in the inner circle. For those of you who want to find more from me, all of my links are in the description below. Check out the other videos here. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm about to drop a big thread on eggs and choline research you have never seen. All the people telling you that eggs are the most wonderful food in the world, and some out there are saying that eggs are good for vitamin A detox. I'm going to show that it's very incorrect. And the more eggs you eat, we're linking stuff to heart disease, diabetes, cancer. It's terrible. And I don't even mention cholesterol. Don't bring up cholesterol with me because I never mention it. When have you guys ever heard me talk about cholesterol? I don't talk about cholesterol. Your liver makes like 80% of your cholesterol. So if there's a cholesterol problem, it means you got a liver problem. We just bring it right back to the liver. So your bile acids are made from cholesterol. So if you had a bile problem and a cholesterol problem, whoa, that would be weird that they're all together. Right? So anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. I'm off. Have a great weekend. Keep learning. See you later. Bye now.